Well, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome back here to the launch pad, or maybe good morning or evening, depending where you're joining us from. My name's Zach. I'm the founder and host here at the launch pad, and you're joining us for our live launch coverage of today's NROL-91 launch from Slick 6 at Vandenberg Space Force Space in California. Today, exciting day to see another Delta 4 Heavy back out at a pad, but also a sad day, as this will be the last Delta 4 Heavy launch from Vandenberg Space Force Base in Florida, and the third last Delta 4 Heavy launch in its entire history. We have one more next year and one the year after that, both in Florida, and we'll be on site to bring you live coverage of those, but the last one launching from Vandenberg Space Force Base here today. If it's your first time here, though, welcome. Here at the Launchpad, it's our mission to inform and inspire the explorers of tomorrow, because we believe that space is better together. And as always, as we get started, take a moment, let us know in the chat 5x5 if we're coming through all right, and let us know where you're tuning in from. Love to give a shout out to a few of you that are tuning in. If you haven't yet, take a moment, engage that like button, and share out the stream as we count down T-minus 21 minutes and counting until launch. We've been getting updates over the last couple of hours from the United Launch Alliance. They are going through their final post-fueling inspections right now of the rocket, and are preparing for launch there, and you can see that live feed coming up, so we'll be patching them in and listening into them in the near future. One thing we want to say right off the bat here, and we appreciate ULA putting it on their streams, is they do grant agencies like ourselves that are space media agencies the right to be able to use their live broadcasting material and their live streams for this. Vandenberg's a little bit harder one for us to get our own cameras at, and we appreciate that United Launch Alliance provides these for us to be able to bring you guys the best possible coverage of everything space as we count down now just over 20 minutes until launch. Great to have so many of you joining us in here. We've got BJ from Devon. We've got Braden from Bakersfield. I know we've got Kevin and Mary Ann, part of our TLP crew, down just a few miles from Vandenberg. They're going to be checking out the launch there in person. So if you happen to be at a beach just south of Vandenberg, take a look out. You might see some of the TLP crew on site. We got Larry Marks from New Jersey. We got Timothy from Montgomery, Alabama. Cole's in Milwaukee. Uncle Yukon in Western Washington State. It's great to have you here. ULA is getting all spooled up, so we're going to listen into United Launch Alliance Mission Control as they count down to launch.
Afternoon, I'm Caroline Kirk, a systems engineer at ULA, and your host for today's Delta 4 Heavy NROL-91 launch for the National Reconnaissance Office. I'm joining you here from Vandenberg Space Force Base in California, where liftoff is currently planned for 2:53 p.m. Pacific. In addition to watching our webcast, you can also follow live mission progress at ulalaunch.com. Our count is currently in the second of 2 planned holds. At this time, the team is finishing fueling activities. At the request of our customer, we'll end today's live coverage following payload fairing jettison. Before we continue, let's check in on today's weather. The Space Launch Delta 30 forecast is looking good. Here are the numbers. The probability of violating launch constraints is 30%. Ground winds are 10 to 14 knots out of the northwest, and the temperature is 69 degrees Fahrenheit. Visibility is 5 to 7 miles, and the primary concern for today is ground winds. Today's launch is for the National Reconnaissance Office, or NRO. The NRO is the leader in developing, acquiring, launching, and operating the nation's intelligence, surveillance, and reconnaissance satellites to secure and expand America's advantage in space. The NROL-91 mission will strengthen the NRO's ability to provide a wide range of timely intelligence information to the national decision makers, warfighters, and intelligence analysts to protect the nation's vital interests and support humanitarian efforts worldwide.
Line item is 863 and 866. It's the turbopump supply valve outlet pressure, CVC.
Roger.
And we have a new T0 of 3:25 and 30 seconds Pacific. Let's learn more about this heavy lift rocket, the only rocket capable of launching NROL-91.
And if you're just joining us, welcome here to the launch pad and our live launch coverage of NROL-91. We've heard from the teams on the ground that we do have a new T0, so we're just working on adjusting that clock there, and the new T0 now set for 3:25 local time, which is about a 30 or so minute delay here compared to what we were expecting. So we do have a little bit of time there, updating that overlay for you guys in this moment. Yeah, we're about 47 minutes or so away from launch now based on this new T0. They're extending the T-minus 4-minute hold, which is a built-in hold for teams to complete post-fueling activities on the Delta IV Heavy, and that is why they have established this new T0 time. That is part of the procedures. That's one thing with these countdowns is you do have T-minuses and L-minus, and we're actually going to fix that on ours. That ours should be an L-minus right now in that top corner. T-minus is the countdown clock through all of the operational procedures that need to be performed. L-minus is your real-world countdown, and that is what we are having there always in the top left corner. We will always keep that in the L-minus to give you guys a better idea of actually how long until ignition and liftoff of that rocket, now just over 46 minutes from now. Since we got a little bit of time, we're going to answer some of your comments and questions. If you have those, you can send us those in the chat by tagging us at the Launchpad, and we'll be answering those live. If you haven't yet, though, take a moment, engage that like and subscribe button. We're on that road to 100,000 subscribers, and we appreciate your guys' support in helping us do our mission of informing and inspiring the explorers of tomorrow, because we do believe that space is better together. And there's a live view of Slick 6 at Vandenberg Space Force Base in California, where the Delta IV Heavy is all loaded up, fueled up, ready to go, launching on a classified mission. That's why we don't actually know a whole lot about today's mission, as we know nothing about what's in that fairing. We know it's a spy satellite, and there's some rumblings on what it could do, but we don't have a whole lot more information than that, and so we will be sitting back and relaxing and waiting for a little bit longer to see the third last Delta IV Heavy launch. Now, this is something we will see during the ignition sequence. The Delta IV Heavy is a really incredible rocket that actually lights itself on fire right before it lifts off. It ignites, it clears away any of the excess propellants around it and on its foam, and then it actually lifts off. Now, we can actually see it do this ignition sequence and not launch. We have seen that before. It has a quite incredible abort system, even following ignition, being able to stop itself from launching, but quite an amazing triple booster rocket there that we will see launch in just over 45 minutes. On your screen now, they're playing through a simulation of what we will expect throughout today's launch, launching to the southwest from Vandenberg Space Force Base. Again, if you guys have questions, you can send those in the chat. Make sure you tag us at the Launchpad. It flags it in our system, so we'll be able to answer those for you. It's great having you all here. Revolve's asking, is it reusable? No, the Delta IV Heavy is not a reusable rocket. For it, not any part of it. No, not the fairings, not the boosters. Reusability is still something quite rare. Really, only SpaceX and Rocket Lab have brought that online, and we hope to see a number of other launch providers in the near future bring that online, but it is not a reusable rocket. It will do safe reentries and discarding of its boosters into the ocean, as well as its fairing and its second stage. SpaceX is asking, is the countdown to the launch window opening? Yes, that's correct. L- is the countdown to, well, sort of. L- is the countdown to real world time, how long until ignition. T- is the countdown in the launch operations. So we see this a lot more with ULA and with SLS. We saw it a lot during the space shuttle program, where we would enter these T- 4-minute holds. Part of the countdown that we sit there, we sit there for half an hour, sit there for an hour, is for teams to be able to go through their processes, say, yes, we've checked everything, now let's continue on towards the launch. And these holds can be extended. We saw that with the first couple Artemis 1 launch attempts. Just working to make sure we're getting updates from ULA here. Yeah, last update, just that new T0 time. So a great question coming in. It's a 3-booster rocket, but it only has 3 engines. What engines are they using? The first stage is composed of 3 identical boosters strapped together. Each of the 3 boosters have a single RS-68A engine manufactured by Aerojet Rocketdyne. Each engine can produce over 3,100 kilonewtons of thrust for 362 seconds, and it uses propellants of liquid hydrogen and liquid oxygen. The second stage that you'll see later into the flight is a single vacuum optimized RL-10B-2 engine that also runs off of liquid hydrogen and liquid oxygen, and it burns for 462 seconds. Great question there. These are all ULA and Aerojet Rocketdyne parts that are part of their vehicle. Delta IV Heavy does have 2 fairings that it has been able to use. It has a 5-meter fairing, 2 5-meter fairings, but it has 2 lengths, a 47-foot and a 62.7-foot fairing. We've only ever seen 12 other of these rockets launch. This is the 13th, and then we only have 2 more left in its lifetime. So not a rocket that we've seen a whole lot. It's kind of like once a year we might get to see one, but it is a powerhouse, being able to bring up a large payload when required, and a very common one to see used by the National Reconnaissance Office when they need to launch a large satellite that we're not allowed to know anything about. The Delta IV Heavy rocket, see some people asking about how tall it is. It is 40.8 meters tall, or 134 feet tall. It's a 5.1 meter diameter for one booster, or 17 feet. Weighs over 26,000 kilograms, or 57,000 pounds empty. And once it's loaded up there, it's weighing just under 500,000 pounds. Carrie asking, hi TLP, what is the payload today? It is classified. It's always a fun statement to be able to say. It's classified. We know it's some sort of spy sat for the National Reconnaissance Office, and that is all we are allowed to know. Hey Mo is asking, why is Delta 4 being discontinued? It's part of United Launch Alliance's kind of evolution into their next era with their Vulcan rocket. So their Vulcan Centaur was expected to launch sometime this year. It's definitely been pushed into the first half of next year at this point. So we are excited to see that come online. But that Vulcan Centaur is actually going to replace the Delta 4 Heavy. It's also going to replace the Atlas, which we only have about 25 left. And of course, we no longer have the Delta 2 that United Launch Alliance used to use as well. So ULA going from having kind of 3 powerhouse rockets now down to going into 1 that is able to be used across a variety of needs, depending on how many boosters and stuff they put on the bottom. But we hope to see that Vulcan Centaur take its test flight early next year. Matthew's asking, do they make the core last longer than the side boosters by throttling down the center engines? So they're able to actually, I believe, I want to verify this, actually the fuel is able to move between the 3, so they can stage, kind of asparagus stage it. So they get rid of the sides and then they get rid of the main core. I want to double check that one, but that should be how that goes. And it's a very quick sequence, that separation as well. If you're just joining us, welcome here to the launch pad. You're joining us for our live launch coverage of NROL-91 from Vandenberg Space Force Base in California. We are counting down about 38 minutes until launch. We've had a small delay for today's Delta 4 Heavy flight, the last one from Vandenberg, but the teams are going through final preparations and checkouts, and we are continuing that count, and teams confirming they are at 38 minutes until that liftoff time and continuing in that count. Teams are monitoring the Delta 4 Heavy, the pad, and downrange assets, and weather remains favorable. At the last official weather update that we got, we did have a 90% go for weather, so we'll be continuing on for today's countdown. Hey, Mo's asking, will I be able to see the launch fly over Los Angeles for this launch? Let me work on there's actually a graphic I can show you that will show you where you should be able to see this launch. So give me one moment and I'll pull that up. It is something visible, depending on how your cloud and conditions are, but it does look like an absolutely beautiful day down at Vandenberg and in the region. So there is a greater possibility of being able to see this, that more so than there has been in some of the past cases. So give me one moment here just to pull up that graphic. This is provided to us by the United Launch Alliance for it. It's one thing we really appreciate their team does, helping let people know what's happening down at Vandenberg. Vandenberg, not a super busy launch location, so when there is a launch that comes up, it's always great to see it here. We're going to quickly transition away from looking at the rocket. I know we want to see the rocket, but there is a look at the number of minutes following the launch, up to about 4 minutes after, where you will be able to see that path. That red line is the path that the booster will follow on its course, and if you can see there where the side boosters will cut off and separate just over 2 minutes, 2.5 minutes into flight. So if you are anywhere along the Santa Barbara, Ventura, Oxnard, Los Angeles, Long Beach, Santa Ana, all the way down even to San Diego and Tijuana, there is a chance that you could see this launch if you have a clear enough view. Keep in mind, it's going to be getting quite high, so you might just see a little orange streak. These would be a lot easier to see, of course, at night. But if you are along that coastline, take a look. You might actually be able to have a view of the last Delta 4 Heavy launch from Vandenberg Space Force Base. Going back to a live view of Slick 6 there, you can see that Delta 4 Heavy venting away. It is fully fueled, ready to go for today's flight as teams continue through their final checkouts in preparation for launch. Now, we are still in that T-minus 4 minutes and holding mark. We will be in there for another 31 minutes, but we will have some polls on whether they will resume the count or not, and then we'll have their final go, no go for actual launch sequence. Rival's asking what would happen if the rocket fails. Just like anything, the teams would have to do a full investigation on why that occurs, but United Launch Alliance has an incredible track record. The Delta IV Heavy has a great track record, so we are not expecting anything of the sort to happen here today, unlike something with SLS with its first test flight. That is one important distinction to make. This is a fully operational rocket that has completed well over 10 operational missions. We are seeing a lot of new rockets come online. Astra, SLS, Relativity, Firefly, Rocket Lab, so many others. Rocket Lab's into operations now, but we are seeing a lot of test missions. So keep in mind, this is fully operational, so we don't expect to see any sort of issues here today as teams continue through their final checkouts. Hey, Mo, thank you so much for that super chat. Appreciate your support, helping us continue bringing you guys the best possible launch coverage. Thanks for having you here. Again, if you guys have questions, you can send those to us in the chat by tagging us at the Launchpad. We'll work on answering those live throughout the remainder of today's countdown. Normally, we'd have a lot more to talk about for the payload and stuff, but we don't actually know how much what's in there, so we can't really talk about it at this time. Aaron, can you explain your launch timer? Where did you get that number from? So the countdown for 33 minutes, that is from the official T0 from the United Launch Alliance. They are sending updates out to media organizations, and that they informed us about 10-15 minutes ago. Their new T0 is 3:25 and 30 seconds Pacific time, or 6:25:30 p.m. Eastern, or 22:25 and 30 seconds UTC. So that clock is running to that time. The T-minus clock is their operational clock and what they're running in mission control, and that's what they will be operating off of. So that's where that clock comes from. But that's a really great question. We're working on a video that breaks that down. One thing ULA always does, they always dedicate their rockets to people that have been part of their teams, people that they have lost that have helped make United Launch Alliance and Delta IV Heavy or Atlas possible. A really neat touch on a company that really keeps its staff as a community, and they recognize that, which is a really nice thing to see. Today's the NRO, this is a message from the NRO, remembering some of their teammates for today's mission. Matthew Ferry, if you remember right, SLS uses hydrogen and LOX as well. Yep. Thanks so much, Stefan. Appreciate it. Donovan, is it true that as of March 2022, there will only be 3 flights remaining? Correct, and you were tuning in for the third last flight of Delta IV Heavy. This is the last flight out of California. The last 2 will take place in Florida, one next year, one the year after. We're going to be on site for both of those, bring you guys live coverage of that before we see this vehicle retire. Sad to see another kind of workhorse vehicle that really made the last 15, 20 years what we've been used to. We didn't see a lot of these. This is only the 13th or 14th one we've seen, but it's a quite recognizable rocket. And who doesn't like a rocket that just lights itself on fire before it launches? It kind of rises out of the flames like a phoenix there. It's kind of cool to see. Question coming in, what part is reusable? Do you think expendable part companies or components should be banned. Absolutely not, actually. One thing we need to keep in mind is reusability is extremely rare still, and it is extremely expensive to do. If United Launch Alliance wanted to try to make if United Launch Alliance wanted to try to make the Delta IV Heavy reusable, it would be a completely different rocket. It would have different capacities on what it could launch, different weights, it would cost more. And sure, long run, yes, maybe it would be better for the environment of them being able to reuse it. But for how few we've seen, that's normal to not do reusability. For the type of missions that they get used on, a lot of these are for spy satellites, for the reconnaissance office. There are requirements that some boosters need to be new. Even with SpaceX, there are certain missions that people require new Falcon 9s for because they don't want to use a reusable rocket. So it's still new. I think banning non-reusable components and stuff isn't great. I definitely think it's something companies that are designing new rockets should strive for. But look at SLS. Hopefully we'll fly and be successful and have a future. We're going to have Atlas still flying 20, 25 more times. And there's a few other rockets out there as well that work. Look at Soyuz. It's completed like 2,000 flights. Not reusable, but it's reliable and we know it works. And sometimes until we get to the point where we have a rapidly reusable rocket that's turning around and is fully trusted and stuff, which Falcon is getting there, we need to have other vehicles, and we can't get rid of these ones just because they don't fit kind of more of a modern day idea of how we operate rocketry. They're both needed. Again, if you're just joining us, you're looking at a live view of Slick 6 at Vandenberg Space Force Base in California, where teams are counting down 28 minutes and counting until launch of today's Delta IV Heavy, the last one from there.
Go ahead, knock.
So a condition that was not expected but completely understood. We will recommend proceeding on that one. It was only due to a delay in the count for today.
We're just listening into mission control.
LD
concurs.
And MD.
MD concurs.
And RLM LC, that one.
Harlem, go ahead.
I just want to verify with you the engine and inlet OTCs, they've all been cleared.
Negative. Was getting ready to do that, and then I could receive the second set of OTCs, 863 and 866.
Okay.
So it interrupted me from clearing them.
Right. Go ahead and clear those, and then after the L25, we'll be able to clear the other two.
Roger.
So you could hear into mission control there, teams working through procedures. They have that small delay, so some procedures get moved out of timeline, but they're working towards it. That is why they have those built-in holds for them to make sure they check all the boxes before they continue into a later part of the countdown.
Delta rockets have launched many of the world's vital space assets. Let's take a look at the impressive legacy of the Delta family of rockets.
And they're going to play another video, which means we don't get to see the Slick 6 more for that. Show us the rocket. But we'll continue answering your guys' questions. You can send those to us in the chat by tagging us at the Launchpad, and we're working on answering those. If you're just joining us, though, take a moment, engage that like button. It's free, really helps us out. And if you enjoy space and haven't yet subscribed, engage that subscribe button so you never miss another live launch coverage, space news update, space briefing, exclusive one-on-one interview, Starbase coverage, and more. We've got some exciting announcements coming up over the next couple of weeks that we can't wait to share with you. And if you're a TLP member, by hitting that join button, you're going to get early access to some things starting in the very near future. So make sure you're keeping an eye out for some of that membership access. At this time, we are now coming down to T-minus 25 minutes, 40 seconds until launch of the Delta IV Heavy. Diego, thank God it was delayed. I'm coming back for it. Well, I'm glad you'll hopefully be able to catch it there. SpaceX asking, is the engine on the Delta IV second stage a vacuum variant of the booster engine? No, it is not. So the first stage of the Delta IV Heavy uses the RS-68A engine from Aerojet Rocketdyne. The second stage uses the RL-10B-2 engine. So they are different engines, but the second stage is a vacuum optimized engines, but both stages use liquid hydrogen and liquid oxygen as their propellants. And Matthew, I think that's a great statement. It's good to be team space and not just a fanboy of one company or organization to make sure everything works. That's why literally in our mission statement is to inform and inspire the explorers of tomorrow, because we believe that space is better together. And we want to reach out back to the moon. We want to go to Mars. We want to live in space. And the only way we're going to do that is if we work together. Now, we can all have our favorites. Don't get me wrong. We can have a favorite rocket, one most exciting to see, one we like the most, maybe one we agree with how they get used the most. But we shouldn't actually be negative towards anything, because look at the amazing thing we're doing. We are launching stuff off of our planet. This is something we couldn't do 60, 70 years ago. We're living in space for now decades consecutively. And we're getting ready to go back to the moon and then on to Mars, and to stay this time and live there permanently. It's an exciting time and it's an exciting future ahead, and we need to make sure we're staying positive in that sense. And in that sense, we're all in a kind of a toxic relationship with SLS right now of wanting it off the ground. But remember, it's a test flight. It's never flown before. So we need to stay positive for it and hope it works. And then hopefully they can make it a little bit cheaper in the future as well. Robert Wells is asking, what do you think of Elon's Starship? Is it a good rocket for the future of space flights? I think Starship's great. I think if it works, it's going to be really good. I'm excited to see test flights beginning up here again in the next couple of months to get some orbital testing and start proving out that vehicle, and hopefully maybe see some sort of operational launch by the end of next year, like a test operational launch with some Starlinks. So I'm excited to see it work. The Mechanic, are there multiple people working on the YouTube channel, or are you having to juggle Q&As between multiple streams? It's a really great question. So I am super excited and honored that we do have a team of people here at the Launchpad. It's not just me. We've got people across Canada, the US, and also into the UK now as well. We're getting ready to set up TLP Studio UK. So I'm excited to have Kieran, who many of you saw us down in Florida with. He's going to be coming on as a on-air host for launch coverages and briefings and stuff starting in the near future. So excited to have him joining us. And then we have our incredible moderator team helping with keeping track of all the chats, especially while we have multiple streams. As you can imagine, can't keep track of all of them at one time, but I do have them all here in our main studio open so I can monitor them as the best of I can. And that's why when we say, if you have a question, tag us. It helps flag it in our system, because we don't want to miss your questions. Questions are how we learn and how we can help, inform and inspire. So that's why we do that. And we're always growing our team. So if you're interested in becoming part of that TLP team, not probably what your question was for, but we're going to plug it. You can always head on over to our website. One of the mods will drop a link in the chat on how you can join our team. We've got some applications open. We are looking for photographers and videographers basically worldwide, as well as we have openings for moderators and for contributors and writers right now. So you can definitely check that out, become part of the TLP crew. For that, if you apply, give us some time. We're going through it, and we'll reach out when we have an opening there. But this is all done just by people that are passionate about space and are passionate about that mission of informing and inspiring. Dime Time is asking, what vehicle is going to be replacing the Delta IV Heavy? It will be the Vulcan Centaur, also from United Launch Alliance. That's what we will be seeing. United Launch Alliance right now, as we've had that delay, is playing a bunch of videos as to fill time. So you're seeing here, as we've been answering your guys' questions, kind of a compilation showing the history of the Delta family of rockets. So we'll hopefully see another live view of the pad here momentarily. Daniel's asking, I live in Phoenix, Arizona. Will I be able to see this rocket taking off from this far away? Unfortunately, Daniel, you're not going to be able to. I wish I could say yes, but you won't be able to. I'm going to bring up a graphic here for you guys. If you are, though, in the Los Angeles, San Diego region, here is a map showing where you may be able to see today's flight. This is not a guarantee. Obviously, depends on cloud conditions and heating haze and all of that. But we do have a range from, obviously, Santa Barbara down to Ventura, Los Angeles, Long Beach, Santa Ana, all the way down to San Diego and Tijuana, all the way over to San Bernardino, and even into Bakersfield. We'll have a chance of possibly seeing this, and you've still got about 20 minutes to move a little bit closer to the coast if you want to try to get a shot of today's flight. That red line is the path that the rocket will be following, so that's where you're going to be looking for. It's going to kind of arch through the sky. Obviously a lot easier to see a night launch than a day launch, but this is the visibility map provided by United Launch Alliance for today's mission. If you are down anywhere there and see it flying and you take a photo or a video of it, make sure you tweet it to us over on Twitter, tlpn_official, or you can email it to us at the launchpadnews@gmail.com for the chance to possibly be tweeted or retweeted out on our channels to see what your views were like. We always love seeing what launches are like from your guys' perspective, so make sure you tag us at tlpn_official. And thanks, Stellar, for dropping those links in there. Appreciate it. Stefan, do you think in the new generation will live in space? Do I think next generation probably meant there? Absolutely. I think I'm lucky enough, many of us are lucky enough to be of the generation that as older adults will have an opportunity, adults and older adults have the opportunity, if we're in different careers, to be able to go up. I think our kids and our grandkids are going to be the ones that is a normal thing. I think it's really exciting now. You know, kids being born now are only ever going to know reusable rockets with SpaceX. You know, that's going to be just a normal thing that rockets land. You know, in a few years, kids are going to be used to seeing things like Starship launch frequently. And that in, 5, 6, 7 years, there's a chance that kids born at that point will never know a world that we didn't have people living on the moon, which is really, really incredible, an exciting future ahead. So absolutely, I think we're at that tipping point that these generations are going to be the last to see us only be here on Earth, which is really exciting, but really scary because it's a big challenge to be able to live up there successfully. Cobra, I can see the launch in San Diego. Yes, there is a chance that you'll be able to see it there. Just at the edge of the ring there, about 180 seconds or so into flight. If you look out straight across the ocean, look high up, you might be able to see a bright white light, kind of almost like a meteor shooting across the sky in the daytime. You might be able to see that there, so definitely keep an eye out on it. ULA continuing to play through a video rather than showing the rocket, but that's okay. We are counting down now, just over 16 minutes and counting until launch of the United Launch Alliance Delta IV Heavy from Vandenberg Space Force Base. We have had confirmation from ULA. Upper level winds have now been verified, acceptable for flight. They are continuing towards today's countdown and progressing through that as well. Waiting for more updates as we continue through today's count. Bill, my friend wanted to be an astronaut and working in the bank. Well, soon we're going to need banks on the moon and on Mars, maybe. So I think that's one really exciting thing that we here at TLP have really been looking through recently is no matter what career you're in, there's a way that you can be involved in space exploration. You could be a janitor, you could be a cook, you could be a banker, you can be an artist, you can be an engineer, a manager. Every single job, if you ever get to go to NASA Kennedy Space Center, that facility needs absolutely everything to run, from summer camp counselors to interns to anything. So you can be involved in this next generation of space exploration by just doing what you might be already doing in another career. It's not too late to be able to switch into space exploration. As we come down to 15 minutes and counting, there's a live view of Slick 6 at Vandenberg Space Force Base as United Launch Alliance continues towards their liftoff of their third last Delta IV Heavy in their history, and the very last one launching from California. The vehicle system engineer is pulling. Let's listen in.
At this time, second stage LOX is ready for terminal count.
Roger. OS, Elsie.
Go, Elsie.
First step 1170 OM, perform vulnerable data transfer to backup CCLS.
Roger.
Last month, ULA successfully launched SBIRS GEO-6 for the Space Force. Let's take a look at the highlights from that mission.
And you heard their teams polling through and working some of their final checkouts. The vehicle system engineer is polling the Denver technical team, comprised of specialists in various hardware and technology disciplines on the Delta IV Heavy. They've conducted their evaluation of all the data and systems of today's rocket through the countdown, and the results of that poll will help continue through the countdown towards liftoff, now just over 13 minutes away from now. If you haven't done so, take a moment, share out the stream, let people know that we're coming close to this launch of NROL-91 from Vandenberg Space Force Base. Today's mission will be the 387th flight of a Delta rocket since 1960, and the 95th and final launch to occur from Vandenberg, wrapping up another historical run of rockets at Vandenberg, leaving really only SpaceX left that launches out of Vandenberg at this time. We don't have a lot of others there. Vandenberg never really built up to what the Space Coast has become, but hopefully we will see some new life brought into it now with Firefly and some of the other new agencies looking at Vandenberg as an option for polar launches as well. But another chapter getting ready to close at Vandenberg Space Force Base. Tripwire is asking, do you think that the Space Force have already put weapons in space, or is there a treaty forbidding that? That's a really interesting question, especially with the state of the world right now and everything going on. There's definitely, I'm sure, been technology that's been tested. There are a lot of treaties. There is one major treaty, the Outer Space Treaty, that does restrict certain rules and regulations on that. And then, of course, we have the new Artemis Accords, which take into account not only low Earth orbit, but now all the way from low Earth orbit to the moon, to Mars, the land on Mars, underground on Mars, the air on Mars, in between, and all the way up to the asteroid belt. And it sets in rules for peace and for exploration and sharing of history and knowledge to help everyone push forward together. Artemis Accord is really incredible. We're working on a video on that. That'll be your full kind of guide to the Artemis Accord, so keep an eye out for that soon. But I'm sure technology has been tested. Why wouldn't it be? We have classified missions like today where we don't know what's on board. I think we would have probably, unfortunately, already seen the outcomes of weapons in space if we had already had them. I think the weapon in space right now that we might have is cameras. You can't really hide anything on the planet now with the number of cameras that are up there. So I would say that's kind of the weapon of choice for governments right now. But of course, we want space to remain peaceful, and that's why we support the Artemis Accords and we support the Outer Space Treaty there, and hope many more countries that signed the Outer Space Treaty back in the 60s, 70s, and 80s sign on to the Artemis Accords, because there's well over 100 of them that have not done so yet. So we hope to see that there. Stefan, how long has this channel been a thing? We started January 1st, 2021, so it's been an incredible journey, and we're great to have you all here, and we've got some big stuff coming in the very near future. So the fairing logo is the logo for the mission. It's designed by an artist for it. They normally go actually into a video a little bit about it, but I didn't see them go through that today. But it represents the mission and the payload inside. Sometimes we get a little hint from what it is, but there's always a kind of a mission patch for today's thing. Let's listen back in the ULA mission control.
All radiation limits acceptable for launch.
Verified.
Terminal count briefing. If a condition exceeds a launch constraint any time after the terminal count status check, the observer shall now hold on channel 1, identify their station, and briefly state the reason for the hold. OS flight control, perform launch on time verification.
Roger.
OSM, verify the whole fire switch is in the proceed position.
Ready to proceed.
RLM, verify the red line monitor and vent table are in the correct configuration for terminal count.
Verified.
Now minus 9 minutes.
LC flight control, launch on time verified.
Roger. LC.
Following liftoff, viewers watching from Southern California may be able to see the Delta IV Heavy in flight. To get a closer look at this visibility map, check out at ulalaunch.com on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram.
L minus 8 minutes.
This is Delta Mission Control at T-minus 4 minutes and holding. We remain in the planned hold as launch preparations continue. In a few moments, launch conductor Scott Barney will poll the launch team for the final go to pick up the count. 27 engineers and managers are polled for system status and readiness to proceed. This is the final status check before launch for all Delta vehicle systems, ground systems, the spacecraft, and the U.S. Space Force Western Range. The vehicle system readiness poll includes electrical systems, hydraulics, pneumatics, propulsion systems, flight control, and propellants. Let's listen in as Scott Barney performs the final polling of the launch team.
Status check to proceed with terminal count. First stage systems, propulsion.
Go.
Hydraulics.
Go.
Locks.
Go.
LH2.
Go.
Second stage systems, locks.
Go.
LH2.
Go.
Electrical systems, airborne.
Go.
Ground.
Go.
Facility.
Go.
RFFTS.
Go.
Flight control.
Go.
COM.
Go.
GC Cube.
Go.
Operation support.
Go.
Pneumatics.
Go.
Umbilicals.
Go.
HASGAS.
Go.
ECS.
Go.
Red line monitor.
Go.
Quality.
Go.
Ops safety manager.
Go.
ULA safety officer.
Go.
Vehicle system engineer.
Go.
Anomaly chief.
Go.
Range coordinator.
Clear to proceed.
Launch director.
Launch vehicle is ready to launch.
Mission director.
You have permission to launch.
Proceeding with the count. ALC, verified T0 is set for 22:25:30 Zulu.
Verified. L minus 6 minutes.
Establish swing arm lock pins pull.
Active.
Polling is complete. The ULA launch team and the NRO mission director are go for launch. From T-minus 4 minutes until launch, you will be hearing Scott Barney guiding the team through the final steps in the countdown procedure. Several critical activities occur in the final minutes before launch, including verifying fuel tank levels and pressures in the port, center, and starboard boosters, and the DCSS, as well as arming the flight termination system. At T-minus 15 seconds, the launch table HBOs are ignited at the base of the vehicle to burn off excess hydrogen. At T-minus 7 seconds, the starboard CBC engine is ignited. At T-minus 5 seconds, the port and center CBC engines are ignited. Then, after seeing the Delta IV Heavy lift off, you'll begin hearing flight commentator Rob Kesselman providing launch vehicle ascent data. This is Delta Mission Control. The countdown clock has resumed, and we are go for launch at 3:25 and 30 seconds Pacific. With liftoff approaching, we're going to raise the volume on our launch team so you can hear the final preps taking place.
And if you're just joining us, welcome here to the launch pad. You're looking at a live view of Slick 6 at Vandenberg Space Force Base in California, where the United Launch Alliance is preparing to launch the last Delta IV Heavy from Slick 6 at Vandenberg, wrapping up their long history of many years of rockets at Vandenberg. We are now just over 3 minutes and counting. Let's listen in.
.249.
FPS internal.
CBC locks at flight pressure and flight level. CBC LH2 at flight pressure and flight level.
2 minutes. 159.
Vehicle internal.
Hydraulic pressure at 4,000.
155.
Launch sequencer start.
.140.
FCS launch enabled.
137.
FTS armed.
T-minus 90 seconds. The launch vehicle, payload, ground systems, and western range are go for launch.
120.
OCU's armed.
FCS count started.
.1 minute.
Engine
T-minus 1 minute.
Rock, report range status.
Rock range green.
Roger.
50.
Second stage LH2 secure at flight level.
30.
Status check.
Go Delta.
Go NROL-91.
$14.5.
Trophy ignition.
10.
Tester start.
T minus 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4. We have ignition. 2, 1,
Liftoff.
and liftoff of the last West Coast United Launch
Engine
Alliance
cooling water
Delta
on.
4 Heavy rocket carrying NROL-91 for the National Reconnaissance Office.
Vehicle has now begun the pitchover maneuver. All three RS-68 engines look good at this time. Core booster is now throttling down to the partial thrust level. And that core booster
We're
has now
hearing the
reached
voice
the
of
desired
Rob
partial
Kesselman
thrust
providing launch vehicle ascent data.
level. Engine parameters continue to look good. Vehicle is now 3 miles in altitude, 5 miles downrange distance, traveling at a velocity of 1,000 miles per hour. Engine parameters continue to look good at this time. Vehicle is now passing through max Q, maximum dynamic pressure. Mach 1, Delta 4 is now supersonic. Port, starboard, and center RS-68 engine parameters are within the expected operating parameters right now. The second stage reaction control system pressurization valve has opened. Delta 4 now 130 seconds into flight, flying at an altitude of 19 miles, downrange distance of 14 miles. Delta 4 has gone closed loop guidance. Vehicle body rates are as expected. Three minutes remaining in the booster phase of flight. Delta 4 rocket weighs now just 1/2 of what it did at launch, burning propellant at a rate of almost 5,000 pounds per second. 1 minute until port and starboard booster engine cutoff. And all three RS-68 engines are showing good performance at this time. Vehicle body rates are near zero. 30 seconds remaining now until the port and starboard booster engines cut off. And 2 minutes remain in booster phase of flight, 2 minutes remaining until BECO. Strap-on boosters are now throttling down to the partial thrust level. Engine response looks good. We've had strap-on booster cutoff and strap-on separation. The center core RS-68A is now throttling back up to the high power level. The upper stage lock system has begun the boost phase chill down sequence to begin thermal conditioning of the RL-10 engine. 1 minute remaining in the booster phase of flight. And now the upper stage fuel system has begun the boost phase chill down sequence. Core engine chamber pressure continues to look good at this time. Core booster is now throttling down in preparation for BECO. And we have BECO, booster engine cutoff. And we have stage separation, successful separation of the first and second stages. We're seeing the nozzle deployment begin on the upper stage engine. And we have ignition on the DCSS.
This is
This first
Delta
burn of
Mission
today's
Control
mission
at T plus 6 minutes and 30 seconds. We just heard flight commentator Rob Kesselman confirm the successful completion of the early phase of today's flight, and all systems continue to operate nominally. At this time, we'll end our live coverage. For more information about the Delta IV Heavy rocket, please visit ulalaunch.com or join the conversation on Facebook and Twitter. I'm Caroline Kirk. Thank you for joining me this afternoon. And before we leave you, let's take another look at the final West Coast Delta IV Heavy launch.
And there you have it, the final Delta IV Heavy launch from Vandenberg in the books. An absolutely beautiful day down at Vandenberg in California, and an incredible launch of Delta IV Heavy. You're going to have to wait about a year to see another one of these. It'll be launching from Florida, and that will be the second last. So you got 2 more chances to travel to Florida to get to see a Delta IV Heavy before they retired. But that's going to do it for us here at the launch pad. Here at TLP, it's our mission to inform and inspire the explorers of tomorrow, because we believe that space is better together. If you haven't yet, follow us over on Twitter so you never miss space news as it happens. Join us in the TLP Discord. It's free. That's where our space community hangs out all the time. And if you'd like to help us support our mission, consider hitting that join button or heading on over to patreon.com/thelaunchpad to help support our work. Of course, it's a launch day, so use promo code LAUNCHDAY on the TLP shop to get 10% off everything there. This is Zach from TLP Network Studios signing off. I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.